Hi, I'm John O'Neill and I'm a painter in oils and in watercolours, and in the coming weeks I'll be running 2 workshops for one of my local art groups. So to help out, I've produced this little video just to give a guideline on the type of equipment that will be really helpful to bring along on the big day. If you have anything you'd like to add to it, it's not an exhaustive list, so please add those things. However, I would try and stick to more or less everything in one way, shape or form that I'm about to go through. So paint comes in tubes, but it also comes in pans, which are these little things. I can get by with just a small set like this, which these will go in there. But what you can also do is squeeze some of that in and top it up and let it dry, depending on the manufacturer, because some of them stay wet basically all of their life. There's pros and cons to having stuff out of a tube. It mixes really fast. You can mix large amounts really fast. But this is solid and portable and it won't sort of mix up in your pocket. I kind of use this most of the time. This is a small sketching set, really, as you can see, just pocket size, just fits in my hand like that. Something that's really useful as well is to have a list of your colours, so that you can, sometimes it's very difficult to work out what a very dark pan looks like on paper. So here is another one I use. These are made by a company called Schminker, both of them. It's got more space to mix, it's got more pans, it's got a little space for a travel brush, which is quite a handy thing if you like to use one of those. It's not one of the water-filled varieties, and I'll talk about more brushes more in a sec. Again, make yourself a little swatch plate, it's a good exercise. These are good both in the studio and in the field, but they are limited, so what I tend to enjoy using is something a little bit bigger. So yeah, as you can see, this is very large. It has got a lid built into it, large mixing space. What happens with this plastic, unfortunately, is the paint, when it dries, it can curl up and just become like a little wafer sort of thing, get in the way. I don't clean the palette. I always find some use for it as time goes by. And again, I have a little swatch colour sheet to help me. So if we're talking about a palette, this one is quite extensive, and there's a lot that I could probably get by without in the field or in the studio. So this one, on the other hand, is probably a little too basic. Something in the middle is quite nice. So I'll go through the colours which I think are pretty much essential, or should we just say good to have at least. So a cool and a warm yellow. So this is lemon yellow and this is cadmium yellow pale. I like Naples yellow. It's great when you mix with Prussian blue to get great aqua seas and things like that. So Naples yellow is quite nice. Cadmium red, also pretty much essential. This is Carmine. You could swap it for Alizarin crimson or maybe magenta. Prussian blue, I love this colour, it is essential. If you've got a Pthalo blue, which is spelled with a P, silent P, that will do just as well. Ultramarine blue, it's pretty much the workhorse of a lot of painting. Pthalo green, not absolutely necessary, but handy. Olive green, you could probably get away with something like a sap green instead of that. Yellow ochre, a fantastic colour, which I enjoy using. You could trade that for a raw sienna. This is English Venetian red. This is a beautiful colour as well in its own right, but you could trade this with burnt sienna as well. Sepia, brown, it's okay, not absolutely necessary. It's a nice, if you wanted to do a monotone quick sketch, sepia is a fantastic colour for that. But I like this colour, neutral tint. It's great for shadows, it's great for graying down other colours. This was a black which I don't use, and I put in its place a lovely colour called Verditer Blue, which is one of this, I think it might be Daniel Smith, but it's a nice sky blue. If you can't use that, or you don't want to use that, Cobalt is another lovely colour. Cerulean is another beautiful colour as well. But something along these lines is what you need. So when you're beginning your painting, you might find that you need to do a basic sketch, and it's not a bad idea at all. I often start with a pencil, and I'm not too fussed really. I'll just grab any pencil that's to hand that's probably not too soft. There's a couple of 2Bs there and HB. You might want to opt for a mechanical. These are good. You can replace the leads, and they're mechanical. You press that and it has its own little built-in rubber there. For these, you're going to need to have a way of sharpening them, so you can go down the bog standard sharpener route. These are nice. Sometimes I find them hard to get hold of, but you just peel your pencil and you can get a lovely control of the nib surface you use. But I also like to carry a penknife. Watch yourself if you go through places like security at airports and things like that. If you're carrying sketching gear, I've not done this with a penknife, but I've done it with palette knives for oil painting in a bag, and it's kind of got me in a bit of an embarrassing situation. So something to sharpen your pencils with. An eraser. I kind of like these. It's nice and soft, but they can make a bit of a stain on your paper. But you could also opt for this, which is a kneadable putty rubber. I quite like those. In terms of your choice of pen, these are by a company called Sakura, Japanese company, just basically to show you that you can get quite a selection of different colours, but you can also get quite a choice in fine nibs, also disposable. My all-time favourite pen is the Rotring Tiki Graphic. This is 0.2 of a millimetre. You can get other sizes. I rarely use anything other than this, sometimes go up to a 0.5. It's not refillable, unfortunately. You can get Rotring pens that are, but they're quite faffy. If you like a refillable pen, this is by Lamy. It's quite a large nib. So I don't know what their smallest is, but it's nowhere near as fine as that. But it's quite good. It has its moments. You can use different inks. For some reason I've got yellow in here, but you can use different choices of waterproof ink. And yes, the nibs come in a variety of sizes, but I think it's something just like fine, medium and large, so you don't get this 0.2 of a millimetre option. Okay, there you go. Drawing materials. Keep it nice and simple. Pencil, a rubber, possibly a pen, something to sharpen it with. Bingo, that's all you're gonna need. Something that's really effective when you're painting is the use of white space, and you can do that under your own control if you're good enough with the brush handling to leave areas that are white, but sometimes you might want to do some fine detail work. And something that I find really useful is masking fluid. On the subject of masking, please bring some masking tape with you just to line the edges of your paper. It's a really nice effect when you remove it and you see your actual work framed. Now you can get a permanent wax-based masking fluid. This is made by Windsor & Newton. I've tried it a couple of times and it's less faffy. I mean, you have to make sure your brush is extremely clean afterwards because it will wreck your brushes. But it's okay. I've had limited degrees of success with it. I much prefer to use the older fashioned masking fluid. So this is Sminkers. It comes in a blue colour. I think you can get it white as well. And you can mask straight from the bottle. Now what will happen with that is it will go hard and it will go slightly darker blue. You paint over it, you can find it again quite easily, and when it's dry you just rub it off, and it's lovely and it's kind of satisfying. The line is really, you have to work really quickly because of the flow rate. Now you can control the flow of masking fluid in a couple of ways. There are these pens by Molotow filled with masking fluid, different nib sizes. They're okay, but the nibs are prone to drying out if you leave them for a long time. Keeping these clean is a bit of a faff, but I thoroughly recommend this little set by Mask Pen, because what you get is a container full of masking fluid which you use with this nib. Now when you look at this nib, you've got a very fine nib with which to draw. I think it's something like 0.5 of a millimetre. 0.5 of a milliliter. It is easy to sort of dry up. It does dry up very quickly, so you can spend a lot of time cleaning this, but it's well worth it. Once you've finished with the drawing, you take this bottle off, you fill this empty one with water, and you squeeze it out and clean it. And it's as simple as that. A little bit of a faff, lots of fun. Quick word on sketchbooks. When I'm out in the fields, I carry a sketchbook. Not everything in it is a success, but they're great for things like working out your colour swatches, you know, and working ideas out in your head. Sometimes you get, you know, they're covered in sand sometimes, or rainwater, but they're quite a good way to just work things out. You might want to carry something a bit more of a drawing one like this. This is the Fabriano, and this is just a brand new. I don't think I've used it yet. Oh yeah, I've just done some sketching in this one. This is a watercolour sketchbook. Or you could have something nice and big, like this one. This is Stillman and Burn. I'll just open it and slide it across. Whoop. And it's, yeah, it's really nice. Quality paper. Wet media though, you need to look at whether the wet media will buckle your page. So giving advice on the choice of paper to use is extremely tricky for me. If I could just say it in a nutshell, I would say get the heaviest paper you can. You can get 600 grams per square metre, which is basically card, and that's brilliant. It won't buckle, but it's expensive. 300 grams per square metre is probably more acceptable in terms of affordability and its ability to accept water without buckling. But really, if you go lighter than 300 grams per square metre, the paint is going to just be very difficult to master. I'd never touch it. So weight is important. The heaviest you can get, the better. Then you've got to think about surfaces. So you can go from a rough paper. So this is a block of arch rough paper. It's got, it won't come up on the camera, but I'll describe it. It has a sort of orange peel texture to it. And that's nice. It granulates, little pools of pigment settle in it, and it has quite a nice atmospheric effect. Although if you want more of a drawing type of experience with a fine pen or pencil, doesn't quite look as good as this stuff, which is smooth paper, and it's exactly as you'd expect it to be. It's a bit like cartridge paper, takes a pen or a pencil really well, sort of soaks up the water. It doesn't sort of have that texture that the rough would have, and that's possibly why the best choice might be on this occasion cold pressed paper. So the heaviest you can get, cold pressed or smooth, would be perfect. Now what I like to work on is a sheet. So rather than buy a book of it, you bring along what you've got, book, pad, spiral bound, whatever, but I buy this stuff in sheets now, and I cut it down to size, and this is half of a full-size sheet. I think it's about 50 centimeters by 76, something like that, and I'll split it down the middle. Personal choice, purely because I like to do these large panoramic paintings, which is what we'll be doing in the workshop. So if you're looking to just buy this stuff now, you haven't already got watercolour paper that you want to use, buy yourself a couple of sheets, full-size sheets, 300 grams, smooth or cold pressed paper, and then we'll cut it in the workshop. So you'll definitely need water to paint a watercolour painting, and for that you need nothing other than an old pasta jar full of water. This is something that I bought and modified a little bit for sketching outside. So it's a cup that you can extend and hang from a palette, and it's also quite nifty in that a brush can sit on it like that as well. Nice, but not necessary if you've got a jar. Some people like to spray their surface with a fine mist. So this is especially made for the purpose one by Jackson's, and they also do a much smaller one like that. Avoid this compared to the sort of old bleach bottles or bathroom scrubber, because it just comes out in a jet, not a fine mist. And have a look at some of these. So first thing we'll talk about are these squirrel brushes. Yeah, they're wonderful brushes. They hold lots of water. They come to a nice fine point, and they come in several different sizes. You don't need all three. Probably get away with something like that. So that is by Jackson's. They call it a 14. But something like that that's going to hold a lot of water. What we don't want to do is try and cover a huge area. We don't want to cover a huge piece of paper with just something like that on its own. Okay, so we've got these squirrel mops. I find flat brushes quite nice to use, depending on the area you plan to cover, because you can get lots of coverage in one hit, but you can also have the little fine edges for masts and things like that, and straight lines, telegraph poles, and you can get some nice smaller ones as well. This is a Rosemary Co one. So probably, let's just say that so far here's our collection, this and this, so we can put those to one side. Something to do the main bulk of the painting. So this is a synthetic round brush by Proline, and I'd say get a couple of those, a couple of round brushes like that. And this one is a rigger, and it's used for creating very fine lines like tree branches. It used to be for creating rigging on a painting of ships, and probably you'll get away with that. If you've got more, bring them, but what I would say is that on its own, no, you want more. You're also going to need something like this. This is a drawing board. I got this from Jackson's, but any old piece of plywood will do. And you're going to need to mount it at an angle. So if you've got a block to put it under, brilliant. If you've got like a tripod, photography tripod, it is possible to fit something like this on the back. So if you've got that, a tripod will connect onto it, and you can control the head of it. It's very great for sketching in the field. I have something much smaller, so I've made this. This is just out of some scrap, made out of some scrap plywood. There is a YouTube video of me making this. It can mount to an easel. So on here I've got magnets, so it opens up like that. Like that, I can clip my paper on, and I have magnets so I can, if I want to come along with my paint like that, and it stays on, and that fits onto a tripod via this. So it's very handy stuff. Another thing that's really useful, and I'd say essential, is a couple of, you can use toilet tissue or whatever, hankies and that kind of thing. But when I'm having a meal, I always pinch a couple of the big heavy duty serviettes. They're very absorbent, they're very sort of tough, and they scrunch up, and a little goes a long way with these, but you definitely need it to either wipe brushes on or to soak up extra bits of paint that aren't required. So I thought it would be a good idea to show you my studio setup at home which I would use for more involved paintings and developments of sketches. I have mounted on an old piece of plywood, big enough to support half a sheet of paper. This is 300 grams Fabriano. It was a whole sheet. I've slit it down the middle. It's just held on these clips on the board, and the board is propped up with a roll of kitchen paper. But you can use anything you need. But it's got you should see a 30-degree slant, which we'll sort of discover allows the paint to roll down. We use a bit of gravity to sort of keep the paint rolling down the paper, down the page. I have my water container, my drawing tools, and my large palette here with my handy swatch pad so I can see what these darks do for me. And over here I have my collection of brushes, which is a little bit overcomplicated. I could simplify that down, obviously. I've set up my outdoor equipment in the studio because it's absolutely fine to work on something like this at home. I've got the drawing board that folds up that I showed you earlier on, and it is attached using that silver plate on the underside to a regular photographic tripod. It's got the magnetically attached drawing tools. It's got the magnetically attached palette, sketchbook. It's even got, you can't see it down there, but it's even got my water container hanging from this bulldog clip. I can mount it at whatever height I want, and I can set the angle because that's thanks to the photographic tripod. Well, I hope that this video has given you a good idea of the kind of equipment that you'll need for your workshop. I hope that you have a lot of fun painting in watercolour, and I look forward to seeing you soon.